All right, we're 5-3 in our last 8 extra daily picks on BrockPage.com. And if you want to see which one of these games on this video that I'm actually betting on personally, you may want to think about signing up for my extra daily pick on BrockPage.com. It's only going to cost you just $2.99, and the link for that pick is in the description section below. The game goes off in the early afternoon, so if you're thinking about pulling the trigger, please don't delay. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into some free content. We're going to start off with Cornell taking on Brown, 11 a.m. Eastern tip-off on Sunday, January 30th, 2022. Happy Sunday to you. Hopefully you're having a great weekend thus far. Now, Cornell's -5, totals 149. Cornell did cover in 7 out of their last 10 ball games, and they've done a really nice job scoring with the basketball this year. Having said that, though, these guys have really struggled on the road this season. And as a matter of fact, Cornell got the W in just 3 out of 9 road games this year, and they gave up a whole lot of points in those contests. The Big Reds allowing 82 points a game away from their home court this year, and their opponents are making 48% of their field goals against them in that very same category. Now, they're taking on a Brown squad who covered in 3 out of their last 5 themselves, and they've also got themselves a winning record at home. And speaking of home games, Brown has played real tough defensively in front of their home crowd. The Bears are allowing only 61 points a game at the Pizzatola Sports Center, and they're limiting their competition to just 40% shooting from the field there. Now, when it comes to the scoring in this one, well, it's Tamanang Cho, who's scoring over 15 points a game, along with 8 rebounds and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Keno Lilly's he's drilling nearly 40% of his three-pointers. He's also scoring over 13 points a game. Now, the Bears are currently making 76% of their free throws at home this year, so if you put them on the stripe, they're going to make you pay. Total-wise, Brown saw unders recently with Yale and Dartmouth. They also went 70% to the under in their last 10 meetings with Cornell. So if you're into historical trends, certainly think about that one there. Meanwhile, the Big Red on the other side, they saw 4 out of their last 6 fall under the posted total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Brown, +5, and the under 149. Next matchup, it is going to be Cleveland State versus Northern Kentucky, 12 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Cleveland State's -1.5, totals 134. And although the Vikes have won a bunch of games here recently, they're actually giving up a crap ton of points on the road. As a matter of fact, Cleveland State's allowing nearly 80 points per contest when they travel. And their opponents are making over 48% of their field goals against them in that same category. Now, they're taking on a Northern Kentucky team who won their last 4 straight themselves. And they're also winning 70% of their home games. The Norse is holding their opponents to just 63 points a game on their home court. And they're also doing a real nice job guarding the 3-ball. Now, scoring-wise, when it comes to offensive production, Marquise Warren, he's scoring over 14 points a game, along with 2 boards and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Trayvon Faulkner, he's scoring over a dozen points a game himself, along with 3 rebounds and nearly 40% shooting from 3-land. Really good offensive production out of both of those players I just mentioned. Now, total-wise, Northern Kentucky saw overs recently with Illinois, Chicago, Wisconsin, Green Bay, and Indiana. Meanwhile, 5 out of Cleveland State's last 9 got over the line themselves, throwing out that one Wright State game. I'm going to lean toward Northern Kentucky, +1.5, and the over 134. Next matchup, it is going to be Ohio State versus Purdue, and that's going to be a 12 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Purdue's -9 with the total at 146. Now, Purdue's been, really good at the Mackey Arena this year. They're 10-1 straight up in front of their home fans. 88 points a game they're averaging offensively in that same category. Jaden Ivey, he's shooting 44% from 3-land. He's also scoring 16 points a game. Meanwhile, Sasha Stefanovic, he's shooting nearly 42% from 3-land himself. and he's also scoring a dozen points a game. Now, when it comes to the shooting in this one, the Boilermakers are making 52% of their field goals at home, and they're also draining 42% of their three-pointers as a team in that same category. And if you're worried about defensive play, well, Purdue leads the entire country in defensive boards per game. So this is a very good, very well-rounded team, and they're very dangerous at home. Now they're taking on an Ohio State team who failed to cover in 4 out of their last 7 themselves, and they're allowing nearly 72 points a game on the road this year. Now, injury-wise, Wheeler and Sewing, they're questionable to play here today. And when it comes to the total in this one, Ohio State went 60% to the over in their last 10 outings. Meanwhile, Purdue's 6-2 to the over in their last 8 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Purdue -9 in the over 146. Next matchup, it is going to be Purdue-Fort Wayne versus Wright State, and that's going to be a 12 o'clock Eastern start time. Wright State's -5 at home with the total at 148.5. Now, the Raiders did get the W in 7 out of their last 10, and they're actually winning 75% of their contests at home this year. Having said that, though, Wright State did fail to cover in 7 out of their last 10 ball games, and they're actually just 6-14 against the spread in their last 20. So this is a team that struggled to cover that number this year. Now, the Raiders have also been little threat shooting from three land. They're making only 28% of their three-pointers on their home court this year. They're taking on a PFW team who won 6 out of their last 8. And they've been really good recently covering the number here. Now, scoring-wise, Jared Godfrey, he's drilling nearly 40% of his three-pointers. He's also averaging over 15.5 points a game. Meanwhile, Jalen Pipkins, he's scoring 13 points a game himself, along with 3 boards and a couple assists. Now, the Mastodons are shooting 80% from the foul line when traveling this year, and they currently find themselves in the top 10 in offensive free throw percentage in the country. Now, total-wise, when it comes to the point spread in this one, well, 5 out of PFW's last 8 fell under the posted number. Meanwhile, Wright State, they saw 5 out of their last 7 fall under the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward PFW +5 in the under 148.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Cincinnati versus ECU. Noontime Eastern tip-off. Cincinnati's the 4.5-point favorite on the road. Total's 137. But despite being favored in this one, the Bearcats do have a couple of guys on the injury report here today, and they currently have a losing record on the road. Now, when it comes to head-to-head meetings, the Bearcats failed to cover in 8 out of their last 10 contests with ECU. They're also shooting just 38% from the field when they travel. They're taking on a East Carolina team who scores 75 points a game at home this year, and they covered the point spread in 4 out of their last 7 outings. Vance Jackson's making over 42% of his three-pointers. He's also averaging nearly a dozen points a game. Meanwhile, Tristan Newton scoring over 17.5 points a game himself, along with 4 rebounds and 4 assists. Now, the Pirates have been very good at home this season. They're currently 10-1 straight up at the Coliseum. When it comes to the total in this one, ECU went 70% to the over in their last 10 ball games. They also saw 6 out of their last 10 meetings with Cincinnati get over the line. I'm going to lean toward East Carolina +4.5 in the over 137. Next matchup, it is going to be Fordham versus George Washington, 12 o'clock Eastern start time. Fordham's -1 on the road, totals 132.5. Now, the Colonials of George Washington, they played some pretty good defense at home this year despite their record. GW is giving up just 68 points a game at the Charles Smith Center, and they're limiting their competition to just 28% shooting from three-land there. Now, scoring-wise, James Bishop, he's averaging over 16 points a game, along with 2 boards and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Joe Bamisil, he's scoring over 14.5 points a game himself, along with 5 rebounds. Now, they're taking on a Fordham team who's on a 4-game losing streak, and they're also shooting just 38% from the field when they travel. These guys are having a tough time getting to the basket. And speaking of road games, Fordham scoring just 66 points a night when they travel. Now, total-wise, Fordham saw overs recently with Richmond, Dayton, and Duquesne. Meanwhile, George Washington went 4-2 to the over in their last 6. I'm going to lean toward George Washington +1 in the over 132.5. All right, next matchup, some Big East Conference action. I'm talking about Marquette versus Providence, 12:30 Eastern tip-off. Providence is -1 with a total at 137.5. Now, the Friars got crushed by Marquette in their last outing together. Providence scored just 56 points in that ball game, and they got killed by 32 points in that one. And speaking of head-to-head meetings, Providence has actually given up 78 points a game in their last 10 meetings with Marquette. So if you're into historical trends, kind of been one-sided here, at least, when it comes to offensive stats. Now, the Friars may also have to go to work here today without A.J. Reeves, who's got a bad finger. Reeves, he's been averaging over double-digit points a game. Now, they're taking on a red-hot Marquette team who won their last 7 straight. They actually rank in the top 25 in shooting the 3-ball on the road. Greg Elliott's draining 52% of his 3-pointers for Marquette this season. Meanwhile, Justin Lewis, he's leading the team in scoring with over 16.5 points a game. Now, when it comes to defensive play, the Golden Eagles are limiting their competition to just 40% shooting from the field. Now, total-wise, Marquette saw overs recently with DePaul, Georgetown, and this very Providence team. Meanwhile, the Friars are 4-1 to the over in their last 5. I'm going to lean toward Marquette +1 in the over 137.5. All right, next matchup, some Big Ten action. I'm talking about Minnesota versus Wisconsin, 1 p.m. Eastern tip-off. Wisconsin is favored by 11.5 points. Over and unders at 137. The Badgers covered in 5 out of their last 7 ball games, and they posted a record of 8-1 straight up in their last 9. Now, Wisconsin allows only 66 points a game, and they're limiting their competition to just 32% shooting from 3-land. Johnny Davis is averaging over 21.5 points a game, along with 7 boards and a couple assists. He certainly had a great season thus far scoring. Meanwhile, Brad Davison, he's averaging over 15.5 points a game, along with 4 rebounds and 2 assists. Davison's also drilling nearly 40% of his 3-pointers. He can be dangerous when he gets hot from 3-land. Now, they're taking on a Minnesota team who lost 5 out of their last 6 ball games themselves. And they're scoring only 69 points a game. Significant problems here on the offensive end of the court. Now, these guys have also struggled covering the point spread this year, going just 3-7 against the spread in their last 10. And when it comes to the total in this one, Minnesota's last 5 straight all got over the posted number. They also saw 6 out of their last 7 away from the home court get over the line as well. Meanwhile, Wisconsin is 70% to the over at the Kohl Center this year. I'm going to lean toward Wisconsin -11.5 and the over 137. All right, next matchup, it is going to be Canisius versus Rider, 2 p.m. Eastern start time. Riders -1.5 at home, totals 139. And as much as they've struggled this season, well, the Rider Broncs have played some pretty good defense at home. They're limiting their competition to just 66 points a game on their home court. And they're also holding their opponents to just 31% shooting from 3-land in that same category. Demencio Vaughn is scoring over 12 points a game, along with 7 rebounds. Meanwhile, Dwight Murray, he's scoring 12 points a game himself, along with 6 boards and 4 assists. Now, they're taking on a Canisius team who lost 4 out of their last 6 themselves. And they also have a record of just 0-10 straight up on the road this season. Winless in 10 contests when traveling. The Griffins are shooting just 26% from 3-land on the road this year. And they're also making just 36% of their field goals away from home as well. Lots of problems for this team when they travel. Now, total-wise, the Griffins are 7-3 to the under as the official road team this year. No real surprise there. They're also 70% to the under for the entire season at any location. Meanwhile, Rider on the other side, they saw unders recently with Quinnipiac, St. Pete's, and this very Canisius team. I'm going to lean toward Rider -1.5 in the under 139. Next contest, it is going to be George Mason versus UMass, 2 p.m. East. George Mason is -3 on the road, totals 148.5. Now, the George Mason Patriots have lost 6 out of their last 8 away from their home court, and they're giving up a whole bunch of points on the road. They're taking on a UMass team who's 7-2 straight up at home this year, and they're scoring 83 points a game in front of their home fans. Noah Fernandez is making 42% of his three-pointers. He's also scoring 16 points a game. Meanwhile, Rich Kelly is making nearly 51% of his three-pointers. He's also scoring 13 points a night himself. And speaking of three-pointers, UMass is currently in the top 5 in the entire nation in offensive three-point percentage. These guys shoot very well from beyond the arc. Now, total-wise, UMass is 7-2 to the over at home this year, 74% to the over in all of their games. Meanwhile, George Mason went 70% to the over in their last 10 themselves. I'm going to lean toward UMass +3 in the over 148.5. Next matchup, Indiana State versus Bradley, 2 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Bradley's favored by 7.5, totals 141. Bradley won their last 3 straight, and they're playing some really tight defense at home. The Braves are holding their opponents to just 62 points a game at the Carver Arena, and they're limiting them to just 38% shooting from the field. Now, scoring-wise, when it comes to offensive production, Malivi Leons, I really don't know how to say it, but Malivi Leons, he's scoring, while he's shooting over 43% from three-land. He's also scoring double-digit points a game. Meanwhile, Terry Roberts, he's averaging nearly 16 points a game himself, along with 5 boards and 4 assists. They're taking on an Indiana State team who's played pretty bad defensively on the road. The Sycamores are letting their opponents make nearly 40% of their three-pointers against them when they travel. And they're also giving up 76 points a game in that very same category. Now, total-wise, when it comes to the number in this one, Indiana State is 6-1 to the over as the official road team, 71% to the over for the entire season. Meanwhile, Bradley saw 5 out of their last 8 home games get over the posted total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Bradley, -7.5, and the over 141. All right, next matchup should be a pretty good one here. I'm talking about Loyola Chicago versus Drake. And that's going to be a 2 p.m. Eastern start time. Loyola is -3 on the road. Total is 131. Now, Loyola got the W in 12 out of their last 13. They play their best defense on the road. Loyola is allowing only 57 points a game when traveling. They're limiting their competition to just 24% shooting from three-land in that very same category. Now, the Ramblers are actually in the top 3 in the nation in both defending the 3-ball away from home and road points allowed per contest. This is arguably the best defensive team on the road in the country. Now, scoring-wise, Lucas Williamson, he's making 43% of his three-pointers this year. He's also scoring over a dozen points a game. Meanwhile, Braden Norris, he's drilling over 44% of his shots from beyond the arc. He's also averaging double-digit points a game as well. They're going up against a Drake squad who failed to cover in 5 out of their last 6. They're covering only 33% of their ball games at home. The Bulldogs have also struggled a bit grabbing offensive boards at home. When it comes to the total on this one, Drake saw unders recently with Southern Illinois, Missouri State, and Tennessee Martin. Meanwhile, 3 out of Loyola's last 5 fell under the posted number themselves. I'm going to lean toward Loyola Chicago -3 in the under 131. Next contest, it is going to be Marist versus Manhattan, 2 o'clock Eastern start time. Marist is -1.5 with the total at 139. Now, Marist got the W in 7 out of their last 10 head-to-head meetings with Manhattan, doing a pretty good job in recent meetings against the Jaspers. Having said that, though, the Marist Red Foxes, they are on a 3-game losing streak right now, and they also lost 6 out of their last 8. Now, Marist lost to the likes of Quinnipiac, St. Pete's, and Fairfield recently, They're also giving up 70 points a game when they travel. They're taking on a Manhattan team who scores nearly 77 points a game on their home court, and they're also making nearly 50% of their field goals there. Ant Nelson, he's making nearly 44% of his three-pointers this season. He's also averaging double-digit points a game. Meanwhile, Jose Perez, he's averaging over 17 points a game himself, along with 3 boards and 4 assists. Now, total-wise, Manhattan went 70% to the over in their last 10 outings. Meanwhile, Marist saw 4 out of their last 5 get over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Manhattan, plus 1.5, and the over 139. Next ball game, it is going to be Niagara versus Monmouth, 2 p.m. Eastern start time. The Monmouth Hawks are -10, totals 130.5. Now, Monmouth's on a 3-game winning streak, and they're also averaging 78 points a game at home. George Pappas is averaging over 15.5 points a game, along with 6 boards and 3 assists. Meanwhile, Walker Miller is scoring 14 points a game himself, along with 6 rebounds. Monmouth's covered the point spread 15 times already this season. They're taking on a Niagara team who's on a 3-game losing streak themselves. They're averaging only 63 points a game on the road. Now, the Purple Eagles are also amongst the worst in the Metro in offensive rebounding. When it comes to the total in this one, Niagara's 7-2 to the under in their road games this season. Meanwhile, Monmouth is 74% to the under for the entire year. I'm going to lean toward Monmouth -10 and the under 130.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Quinnipiac versus Siena, 2 p.m. Eastern start time. Siena's favored by 2.5 at home, totals 139. But despite being favored in this one, Siena's actually had a tough time scoring points at home this year. They're averaging only 65 points a game on their home court, and they're amongst the worst in the Metro in home offensive rebounding. They're taking on a Quinnipiac team who won 7 out of their last 10 themselves, and they're averaging nearly 75 points a game. Matt Balink is scoring over 14.5 points a night, along with 4 boards and 41% shooting from 3-land. Meanwhile, Kevin Marfo is grabbing 10.5 rebounds a night, along with double-digit points. The Bobcats have beaten the likes of Marist, Ryder, and Fairfield recently. When it comes to the total in this one, 5 out of Quinnipiac's last 7 road games got over the posted number. Meanwhile, Siena is currently 4-2 to the over in their last 6 at home. I'm going to lean toward Quinnipiac plus 2.5 and the over 139. Next contest I have for you, it is going to be Pitt versus Boston College, 4 o'clock Eastern tip-off. BC's -3.5 at home, over-unders 125, and despite their recent skid, Boston College should be able to get the job done in this one. They're 7-4 straight up in the Conti Forum, and they're limiting their competition to just 64 points a game there. Now, scoring-wise, Makai Ashton Langford is scoring 12.5 points a night, along with 3 boards, 3 assists. Meanwhile, Jaden Zachary, he's been dangerous from 3-land. He's actually drilling 45% of his shots from beyond the arc this year. They're taking on a Pittsburgh team who lost 5 out of their last 8. And they've actually played some really bad basketball on the road. Not going to sugarcoat it. These guys are scoring just 59 points a game when they travel, and they're making only 40% of their field goals in that same category. Simply put, these guys just have not been good enough offensively on the road. They're just not getting the job done. Now, needless to say, Pitt's just 1-5 straight up away from home this year, and when it comes to the total in this one, oddly enough, Pitt did see 5 out of their last 9 get over the line recently, and those were overs against the likes of Virginia, Louisville, and this very Boston College team. Meanwhile, BC on the other side, they saw 5 out of their last 7 get over the posted total themselves. I don't think the over is going to be a popular play here, but I'm going to lean toward it anyway. I'm going to lean toward Boston College -3.5 and the over 125. Next matchup, it is going to be Valpo versus Southern Illinois, 5 p.m. Eastern start time. SIU's -6, totals 121.5. And despite being favored by a couple of buckets here, The Salukis of Southern Illinois, they've lost 6 out of their last 7 ball games, and they average only 63 points a game. Now, SIU's also been pretty bad grabbing offensive rebounds this year. They're taking on a VALPO team who's covered in 3 out of their last 5, with outright victories during that stretch over the likes of Indiana State and Northern Iowa. Now, VALPO is scoring nearly 73 points a game, and they're making 76% of their free throws on the road. Kavion Taylor's making nearly 40% of his three-pointers. He's also scoring 11 points a game. Meanwhile, Kobe King, he's scoring over 14 points a game himself, along with 4 rebounds. When it comes to the total on this one, VALPO saw unders recently with Bradley, Missouri State, and this very SIU team. They also went 8-1 to the under in their last 9 meetings with the Salukis. So if you're into historical trends, you may be leaning toward the under in this one. Meanwhile, SIU on the other side, they are currently 6-3 to the under at home this year, 70% to the under for the entire season at any location. I'm going to lean toward Valparaiso +6 and the under 121.5. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup of the show. It is going to be Colorado versus WAZZU, 10 p.m. Eastern tip-off. Washington State's -5.5, totals 131. Now, WAZZU won 3 out of their last 4 ball games, with victories over the likes of Utah and Cal during that stretch. Now, the Cougs have also played very tough defensively this season. They're allowing only 63 points a game, and they're limiting their competition to just 39% shooting from three-land. Michael Flowers is scoring over 12.5 points a game, along with 3 boards and 3 assists. Meanwhile, Noah Williams, he's scoring nearly a dozen a game himself, along with 4 boards and a couple assists as well. They're taking on a Colorado team who lost 3 out of their last 4, and they're averaging only 66 points a game when they travel. The Buffs are also shooting just 40% from the field on the road. When it comes to the number in this one, Colorado did see overs recently against the likes of Oregon, UCLA, and this very Washington State team. I'm going to lean toward WAZZU -5.5 and the over 131. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our quick pick recap, powered to you by my website at brockpage.com, where we are currently 5-3 in our last 8 extra daily picks on that website. I'm going to lean toward Brown +5 under 149. Northern Kentucky +1.5 over 134. Purdue -9 over 146. PFW, that's the Purdue Fort Wayne Mastodons, is it? +5 under 148.5. That's PFW. +5 under 148.5. ECU, East Carolina, +4.5 over 137. George Washington, +1 over 132 and a hook. Marquette +1 over 137.5. Wisconsin -11.5 over 137. Rider -1.5 under 139. UMASS +3 over 148 and a hook. Bradley -7.5 over 141. Loyola Chicago -3 under 131. Manhattan +1.5 over 140. Monmouth -10 under 129.5. Quinnipiac +2.5 over 139. Boston College -3.5 over 125. Valparaiso +6 under 121 and a hook. And for my next and final free pick for the video, I'm going to lean toward Washington State -5.5 and the over 131. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on brockpage.com. Now, if you guys are thinking about getting a package here today on my website, just keep in mind, we utilize the Patreon platform on my website. The way that Patreon's billing cycle works is this. Patreon bills you the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. So if you do end up getting a membership here today on my website, you are going to get access to picks today and tomorrow. But if you continue to opt in, you're going to get billed again on February 1st. I always tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. So if you're on the fence, if you're thinking about maybe getting a package, you may want to think about waiting until February 1st. It's your best value. The earlier, the better. But, you know, if you are thinking about getting a package and you're like, hey, I can't wait. We do have 6 premium sports picks going off today on that site. There's 6 personal bets of mine. We're going to have at least 5 again tomorrow. So you're still talking a roughly anywhere between 10 to 13 personal bets over the next 2 days. So there is some value in that too. But like I said, I always tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. Now, guys, here's some really good news. If you're thinking about joining our board member tier package, well, I got to tell you this. Board members get access to every single pick that I give out on that BrockPage.com website. We have a bunch of different packages, a bunch of different levels. The board member tier, that's our highest level. That's our most expensive package. So not only are you going to get access to the board member tier pick itself, you're going to get access to all the cheaper picks as well, all the lesser expensive tiers. So you're going to get access to every single pick that I give out on that website. It's an all-inclusive pass. Now, just keep in mind, I don't have a board member tier pick today, but still, if you sign up for the board member membership, you're going to get access to everything today and tomorrow. So figured I'd let you guys know about that. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Sunday to you. Best of luck to you. I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at BrockPage.com.